He was known as Mr. Social Security, the lawyer who gets the job done. In tiny Stanville, Kentucky, he built a legal empire out of a complex of double-wide trailers. A 19-foot Abraham Lincoln statue stood in the parking lot, and a sea of yellow billboards crested across the foothills of eastern Kentucky. Eric C. Conn won nearly $600 million in Social Security disability benefits for thousands of people desperate for help. The only thing was, it was all built on fraud, orchestrated by Conn and carried out with the help of corrupt judges and a cadre of disreputable doctors.
Welcome to Kentucky Case Files, a true crime podcast that explores the dark, complex, and often haunting crimes in the Bluegrass State. I'm Emily Steele.
And I'm Marcus Roland, and this is a multi-part series on a sprawling white-collar crime that ruined the lives of thousands of poor eastern Kentuckians, reverberated all the way to Washington, D.C., led the FBI to a seaside city in Honduras, and was exposed by two unassuming bureaucrats in West Virginia. This is the Eric C. Conn case, Part 1, The Kingdom of Conn.
I'm a traditional, boring lawyer who conforms to all the rules and regulations of the bar.
There was some wonder about how this guy had become so successful.
The real story was the Social Security Administration just being weaponized against almost 4,000 of his former clients.
Eric C. Conn is in jail.
Was this a case of evil genius, or was it just clumsy fraud? Eric C. Conn's face was everywhere in Appalachia, on billboards, television, radio, the internet. In the early 2000s, it seemed he was the go-to lawyer to help people secure Social Security disability benefits. But behind the outward success and outlandish persona was a man orchestrating the largest Social Security fraud in U.S. history, one that would devastate many of the very people he claimed to help. Even though many of his clients rightly deserved their benefits, the U.S. government stopped paying, all because their attorney was convicted of fraud, whether or not it was directly tied to their individual case. Adding insult to injury, the letters they unceremoniously received demanded that they pay back every penny. For people already living on the edge, it was a financial death sentence. To understand what Conn and his criminal cohorts did, it's important to understand how the complex Social Security disability system works.
The Social Security Disability Insurance Program, also known as SSDI, provides monthly benefits to individuals unable to work due to a severe long-term disability. The separate Supplemental Security Income Program, also known as SSI, covers low-income individuals who are disabled, over 65, or blind. Both are administered by the Federal Social Security Administration, also known as the SSA, which uses a strict definition of disability. Only those unable to engage in substantial gainful activity due to a medically determinable condition are eligible. To prove a claim, medical records and reports are needed. Nationally, only about 55% to 60% of disability applications are approved. But Eric Conn boasted a 99% win rate. His billboards even guaranteed benefits. And most lawyers don't even get involved until claimants appeal 2 levels of denials and go before an administrative law judge, or ALJ. Even then, only about half of appeals succeed, and the most an attorney can earn is capped, at least back then, around $6,000 per case.
Eastern Kentucky is a place that's long been defined by 2 things: coal and hardship. And the Floyd County seat, Prestonsburg, has some of the highest disability rates in the country. Conn grew up there, a smart kid with big ambition. He was close to his parents, particularly his mother. She would eventually become his office manager and had a reputation as a formidable member of Conn's staff. Conn attended Betsy Lane High School, graduated from Morehead State University and Ohio Northern University College of Law. After law school, he served in the Army at the rank of captain. Then he returned to Eastern Kentucky to eventually work as a lawyer, supposedly helping his former neighbors, an underserved population of disabled coal miners, veterans, the critically injured, and the chronically ill.
As he would tell it, his parents bought him a mobile home, which he used as his first law office. The single-wide soon became a double-wide, and the double-wide soon became a trailer park law complex. He said he was a member of Mensa. He even learned Spanish from a tape, according to the song that chronicled Conn's life as you waited for someone at his office to take your call. That claim also showed up in a music video he sent to President Barack Obama. Yes, you heard that right. But more on that a little later. Bill Estep, a reporter who recently retired from the Lexington, Kentucky Herald-Leader, covered the story extensively and had this to say about his coverage of Conn.
He was a character. He was real well known in the area. Called himself Mr. Social Security. He had billboards all over the place, up and down US 23 and 119. He would hire young women that they were sort of called con hotties, that he would send to ball games with, tight T-shirts and things, and give away T-shirts. And he advertised relentlessly. I think he had, at one point he had ads in the yellow pages, ads all over the place. So yeah, he was real well known. I'd only met him before this blew up. I think I'd only met him one time, and that's sort of in passing. I was in the courthouse in the Judicial Center rather in Pikeville, and I had met him, and I don't even remember what the occasion was. My memory is one of his employees was driving the Rolls Royce and crashed it, and he was just like, well, whatever, kind of laughed and went on. But he was very showy about it as well.
Through his coverage of Conn, Estep developed an impression of the now disgraced lawyer.
He was a guy who was kind of not exactly bullied, but not kind of a loner in high school. And it was almost like his sense of it was, I'm going to show you, all you people that were not nice to me in high school, I'm going to show you that I'm better than you now. I have more money than you. I can buy more stuff. So that ostentatious display was him sort of getting even or getting back at the folks who weren't nice to him in high school. He was proving that he had outdone all, So as I said, he was a fascinating guy, very articulate, obviously smart, obviously also, as it turns out, pretty flawed. And maybe that's the story of a lot of people,
People might have laughed at Conn's audacious style, but Conn was laughing all the way to the bank, and he brought a crooked judge and a few crooked doctors along with him.
Conn's ostentation presented itself as soon as you reached the parking lot of his sprawling office complex. Its centerpiece was a reproduction of the Lincoln Memorial, which Conn touted as the second largest of its kind in the world. According to Conn, it cost him around $500,000. A replica of the Statue of Liberty, while not as towering as Honest Abe, stood nearby. And those weren't the only effigies. Life-size mannequins of Conn sat on top of his yellow billboards, and he was even known to bring an inflatable replica of himself to Social Security hearings, driven there, of course, in one of his Bentleys or Rolls Royces. Oddly, as noted in 60 Minutes, the parking lot of Conn's office, which ostensibly served sick and disabled people, had only one handicapped parking spot.
On top of it all was his $1.5 million, 10,000 square foot home in Pikeville, Kentucky, where he once considered adding a bowling alley to go with the home theater. Oh, and the stripper pole. All of this extravagance was on full display in the middle of one of the most impoverished areas in the nation. In addition to collecting cars, statues, trailers, and expensive suits, Conn liked collecting, wives. Records indicate he was married 16 times. He met most of the women during his international travels to such places as Colombia, Barbados, and Thailand. One marriage produced a daughter. Most of them lasted only short periods of time. One in particular lasted only one day.
Conn ultimately wanted to be the king of Social Security. King Conn, if you will. And for all intents and purposes, he became just that.
Ned Pillersdorf actually met with Conn early in his career when Conn came to him for a job. Here's Pillersdorf.
Well, he was a peculiar guy. He came up to my office, and this was right after, I guess, Desert Storm. And he was asking me for a job, and then I kind of checked around, and kind of the things he said about his military career were simply not true, and I declined to hire him.
Herbie Deskins, a Pikeville lawyer and former state legislator, told the Lexington Herald-Leader he once challenged Conn's military service as touted in one of his self-promotional songs. The lyrics suggested Conn had commanded troops in the First Gulf War, but Deskins knew that wasn't true. Conn wasn't even deployed until after the fighting was over. Not long after speaking out, Deskins received a call from someone claiming to be a private investigator, warning him to stop talking about Conn. He later discovered the caller wasn't an investigator at all, but one of Conn's own employees. Reflecting on the encounter, Deskin said, "He's the most narcissistic person I've ever seen."
But his alleged lies didn't seem to matter. By 2001, Conn was well on his way to becoming Mr. Social Security. By 2013, he had earned what the courts estimated to be a total of $23 million in fees from the Social Security Administration alone.
23 million. And Mark, you said earlier, am I right, that the max a lawyer could earn on a single case was $6,000?
Yeah, and during those earlier years, it probably was a little less than that. It might have been around more like 5.
My math is not quick enough, but that's a lot of cases that he would have had to put through to come up with that.
He handled thousands of cases, or his office did.
He bragged he was the only Social Security specialist in Kentucky, even though the Kentucky Bar Association, which regulates the legal profession in the state, prohibits lawyers from calling themselves specialists in a particular field. He also proclaimed on his billboards that he won 99% of his cases. Another red flag the KBA should have been curious about because, as we mentioned earlier, average Social Security approval rates were nowhere near that high. And it was never heard of. Later on, he guaranteed disability benefits. Another no-no. He even launched a media campaign trying to get President Barack Obama to appoint him to the Federal Social Security Advisory Board, which offers nonpartisan guidance to the President, Congress, and the Social Security Commissioner on how the old age survivors and disability insurance and supplemental security income programs are managed and administered. And what a campaign it was, complete with a music video starring bluegrass music legend Ralph Stanley, Jessica White, the dancing outlaw of the Wild and Wonderful Whites fame, and an early internet influencer called Obama Girl, who was known for her YouTube video proclaiming her love for the 44th president. The song in Conn's video was a spoof of "I Am a Man of Constant Sorrow," tailored to Conn's life story.
His name's Eric C. Conn, a self-made lawyer. He learned Spanish off of a tape.
And there were other songs. One was even a rap. Well, listen for yourselves.
If you need a lawyer, he's gonna show you how it's done. Da-dun-dun. Eric C. Conn.
Despite the lack of attention from the Kentucky Bar Association, Conn's meteoric rise did not go unnoticed. He attracted droves of clients who hoped that Mr. Social Security could help them get their disability benefits. But he also turned the heads of other lawyers in eastern Kentucky who suspected something was amiss. Here's Billy's stuff.
I didn't have a lot of contact with him, but I knew a lot of people who did have a lot of contact with him, other lawyers in eastern Kentucky, and there was, some wonder about how this guy had become so successful and gotten so big.
Conn explained away his silliness as just marketing, a way to put Stanville, Kentucky on the map and to make him stand out. Because really, he was just a boring lawyer who abided by all the rules and regulations of the bar. Here's Conn speaking on how boring he is.
Usually I'm a traditional, boring lawyer who conforms to, of course, to all the rules and regulations of the bar. So some things I like to have fun on, and advertising and those kind of things give me a certain amount of leeway a lot of leeway that I don't have in the practice of law.
But did he really play by the rules? No, says Pillersdorf.
Eric was really Teflon for a number of reasons. One of the old untold stories about all of this, to practice Social Security law, you have to check a box that you have never been previously disqualified from a federal program. And the issue with Conn was he was disqualified from a federal program. He was kicked out of the Veterans Court.
Pillersdorf is speaking of an incident in September 2002 when Conn was the subject of an ethics investigation in the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims. The explanation for the probe remains murky, but somebody somewhere had seen some red flags and acted on them. Amid the investigation, Conn submitted his voluntary resignation before the court in lieu of further investigatory proceedings. That meant he could no longer argue cases in front of a court that had been an important part of his business. The full reasoning has never been disclosed to the public, but something was fishy. The Veterans Appeal Court stated in its order that, quote, although the court is concerned by the alleged professional misconduct of the respondent, his agreement to cease all practice before this court provides the court and its appellants with a protection from any repetition of such conduct by him, end quote. The court added, quote, any member of the public, including, of course, any judge or staff member of this court, is free to bring to the attention of the appropriate authorities the existence of this order, and that attorneys may in fact be under a heightened obligation to take such action, end quote. Translation: hey, KBA, you need to investigate this. This incident would normally have prevented him from practicing before any governmental agency and should have put him once again on the KBA's radar. But either those in charge weren't paying close enough attention or they just didn't care.
I mean, yeah, what I find so striking about that conclusion to the matter before the Veterans Appeals Court is that their claim that, well, as long as he won't appear in front of our court, there won't be any chance for him to continue this alleged wrongdoing. But he just took that roadshow to another court to appear before, right? And so it protected the Court of Appeals for Veterans claims, but obviously did nothing for what was happening over with the administrative law judges and Social Security. But this issue with the Veterans Court of Appeals wasn't the only trouble Conn got into while he was boringly obeying, allegedly, rules and regulations. In 2012, he pled guilty to a misdemeanor for attempting to give a straw donation of $10,000 to then Justice Will T. Scott's Kentucky Supreme Court campaign. Don't forget that in Kentucky, a lot of judges are elected. Scott had appointed Conn to his campaign committee and had talked to him and attorneys in Conn's office about seeking out donations on his behalf. That in itself is not unusual or necessarily out of line. Scott claimed Conn approached him initially, not the other way around. Through Conn's public relations director, Kim Hampton, who was a beauty pageant queen and leader of a posse known as the Conn Hotties, Conn funneled campaign contributions purportedly from Conn's employees, consisting of 10 money orders made out for $1,000 each.
Here's Prestonsburg attorney Ned Pillersdorf explaining.
And the other issue is that I'm completely not objective about this. He clearly committed a felony on a vote bundling situation he got involved with. And the reason I'm not objective, I'm also Mr. Janet Sumbo. My wife was running for the Supreme Court in 2012. And Conn and former Justice Will T. Scott did this money bundling operation, which was flagrant. It got reported. The Attorney General's office investigated it. All 10 people gave statements saying, hey, this ain't my money. And under Kentucky law, that was a felony. And a year later, inexplicably, Conn was allowed to plead guilty to a misdemeanor of attempted straw donation. A straw donation is actually a felony.
And as Pillersdorf tells it, something smelled funny about the misdemeanor plea deal.
And how that got worked out is still suspicious as hell to me. And the situation is under Kentucky law, if you plead guilty to a felony, you're immediately suspended. And Conn got away with this clear felony violation of a pretty vast money bundling operation. I mean, there was no doubt he did it. And how he got that sweetheart deal from the Attorney General's office is a mystery that's never been answered in my view. And so he got away with that.
Scott's campaign eventually returned the money, and Conn gave that money to his employees with the idea they would redonate the money to Scott's campaign. The employees instead kept it. Conn was sentenced to 1 year in jail, conditionally discharged for 2 years. And again, the Kentucky Bar Association, which monitors for attorney misconduct, did nothing. As reported by the Lexington Herald-Leader, Conn was concerned about his ability to continue practicing law in the midst of the Social Security scandal, and told one of his employees that they needed to be nice to Scott because Scott could take Conn's license, quote, in a second, end quote. If the KBA had investigated and sought Conn's disbarment, Scott, as a Kentucky Supreme Court justice, would have been one of the 7 justices who would be the final decision makers. What about the Kentucky bar, their lack of action in this?
Oh, I've been pretty outspoken
Yeah,
about that.
yeah.
I mean, once he got kicked out of the Veterans Court, there's something called reciprocal discipline. You know, if I get in trouble in Ohio, they'll notify Kentucky and I'm in trouble. And that never happened. It was just, there were so many opportunities to shut him down, and it never happened. And, you know, the Bar Association should have done something once he was kicked out of the Veterans Court. My point is, Mr. Social Security should never have been able to practice Social Security law when his practice exploded onto the national scene. And he just got away with so much for so long. And here we are so many years later, still cleaning up the mess.
You mentioned Justice Scott and the campaign contribution deal. That was happening while he was under investigation, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And which make the decision of the Attorney General office even more inexplicable. This was the guy who had been on 60 Minutes, a big expose in the Wall Street Journal, and they had him dead to rights on 10 straw donations. A straw donation, just to be clear, is the money is not from who the donator is. And there were 10 checks, all for $1,000. They were actually not checks. There were 10 money orders from Betsy Lane, Kentucky Post Office, with the remitters being 10 people who worked in Conn's office. And those 10 people said, that's not my money. I mean, that's your classic slam dunk straw donations.
You can call Conn many things: a character, a celebrity, or if you're Conn, just a boring lawyer. But in reality, he was a fraud who would concoct a scheme with judges and doctors to defraud the Social Security Administration of over $500 million with no regard for the fallout for his clients. How does Conn explain his actions? We reached out to him for comment, but he did not immediately respond. Next time on Kentucky Case Files, we'll explore all of this in Part 2, The Fraud Factory.
Sourcing for this podcast came from our independent reporting, the Lexington Herald Leader, the Courier Journal, the Wall Street Journal, the Associated Press, westvirginianews.blogspot.com, the Kentucky Law Journal, NPR, the documentary and podcast The Big Con, U.S. Senate and OIG reports, 60 Minutes, WHAS, WLEX, and Mountaintop News.